Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this Red Tractor webinar. We were just starting a minute late because we've still got people joining, so we're just going to leave it a little while longer while more people join in. Delighted to have so many of you on this evening. Okay, so I'm Philippa Wiltshire. I'm Head of External Relations at Red Tractor. Some of you I may have already met, some I might not. I've been with Red Tractor since it very first started. I'm in charge of all our farmer and stakeholder liaison. I'm joined this evening by my colleague Jess Sloss. Hi, Jess.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jess Sloss, as Philippa said. I'm Senior Technical Manager at Red Tractor and have been with the organisation for about 5.5 years now. So I'm responsible for managing the certification bodies as well as the technical managers.
So this is our second live webinar. It follows the successful webinar done by Jim Mosley last year, which explained all about the consumer campaign. Tonight's topic is our new risk-based approach to inspections, and as I said before, we're delighted that so many of you can join us. This webinar is aimed at our farmer members and industry stakeholders. So what I'm going to do tonight is explain why we're introducing this, how it will work, when it will start, and what it will mean for members. I'm going to start off with a slide presentation, and then Jess and I will answer any questions that you've got. Just a bit of housekeeping. You'll all be muted, but you'll see on the right-hand side of your screen that you've got an opportunity there to type questions. Please feel free to type questions as we go, and Jess will be monitoring those. At the end of the presentation, Jess and I will then do our best to answer your questions. If you've got any technical difficulties, then again, if you want to type any questions into that same box, then Jess will see if she can help you. But hopefully you can all see the screen and you can all hear me clearly. We're going to aim to be finished by about 8:10. So if we just move on, I just wanted to really start with just reminding everybody about the vision. So the vision for Red Tractor is for Red Tractor to be the flagship for British food and farming, with world-class standards, independent inspection and robust compliance at its core. We believe that Red Tractor is uniquely placed to communicate the high standards of British agriculture and British food production to consumers. That's underpinned by food safety, high standards of animal welfare, environmental protection, traceability and origin. And as I've already mentioned, we've already done a webinar on the consumer campaign back in last autumn, which was the beginning of the journey to communicate the benefits of Red Tractor to consumers. That webinar, if you missed it, is available on our website. World-class standards, we believe because of the breadth and depth of Red Tractor that we have world-class standards. By breadth, we mean that we cover all farming sectors except for fish and eggs. We're also not a single topic scheme. We cover food safety, traceability, animal welfare and environmental protection. And also we're not just farm assurance, we're whole chain of assurance. So that's farm, markets, transport, packers, right the way through to the product being packed. So if you take all of that in its entirety, the depth and breadth of Red Tractor is world class. And then why do we need robust compliance? Well, it's absolutely essential to protect the integrity of Red Tractor and, importantly, to protect the integrity of those members of Red Tractor. And it's an element of the robust compliance that we're going to talk about more on this webinar. So why are we changing towards a more risk-based approach? Well, our current inspection regime, as many of you will know, is around an annual, or in beef and lamb and dairy, an 18-month inspection. Farmers are inspected against the standards. If there are any non-conformances identified, then they are corrected within 28 days of the inspection, and then all members get another routine inspection the following year. So effectively, under our current inspection regime, every member is treated in exactly the same way. Some would say there's no recognition for good performers, but as well, there's no extra scrutiny for poorer marginal performers either. So this isn't something that we've suddenly decided to do very quickly. It's actually an area that we've been looking at for quite a while now, probably at least the last 18 months. So why are we looking at it as well? We've got increased scrutiny of farms. We can't underestimate that the British farming industry is under a lot more scrutiny. It's very important that we can stand up as Red Tractor and defend the standards to which Red Tractor standards are. But that means we need to make sure that we have robust compliance against our standards. It's also probably a criticism from farmers in terms of the fact that every farm member is treated in exactly the same way, but recognition that actually not every farm performs in the same way. So we do have those, as I said before, who are probably poorer marginal performers against the standards. And I think members of the scheme would like to see and have been calling on Red Tractor to take a different approach with those farmers to ensure that they don't effectively let the side down and are maintaining the integrity of Red Tractor. And then, as I've said before, we've got the TV advertising. We're now going out much more publicly, talking about Red Tractor, talking about our standards. And we must make sure that what we're promising consumers is something that we can deliver. So robust compliance, absolutely essential if we're going to continue to promote ourselves to consumers. So what are the objectives of our risk-based approach? Well, firstly, and you will see this strapline in a lot of our farmer and member communications, it's around every member, every standard, every day. Effectively, we're telling consumers, and we talk about Red Tractor standards, and that's effectively what it means. So our objective is to be absolutely sure that that is what we're delivering. And don't get me wrong, we're very aware that the majority of our members do meet every standard every day, and the majority of our members are very good performers. But the objectives of this approach is that it will allow us to categorise our members more by risk, to get a much clearer understanding of scheme member performance and internally any exposure that we might have to potential risk, rather than treating every member in the same way. So that's why we're looking at an internal way of categorising those members according to risk. And then, very importantly, one of our objectives is to encourage those poorer marginal performers to improve. That's ideally what we would like to do. We would like to see as I said before, every member, every standard, every day, and encourage those marginal performers to improve. But we do need to make sure that we are robust and that we achieve that. And then finally, it's about targeting our certification bodies. So that means our assessors resource more efficiently. So we need to make sure that that we can do that in an effective way, and effectively a much more targeted way, which is why we're taking this risk-based approach. So effectively, what we're aiming to do here is to protect the reputation of both Red Tractor, but also the majority of farmers who we know are doing an excellent job maintaining our standards. So how will it work? Well, firstly, it's important to say that this is going to be based on the assessment outcome going forward, not past history. We're not suddenly turning around to all of our 46,000 members and telling them how we're categorising them in terms of past performance. This is about looking to the future, and this is part of this webinar is just one of a number of communications we've got to our members to encourage everybody to be complying with our standards at all time. But it will be based on the outcome of the normal routine inspection. And then what we're going to be doing is looking at the non-conformances based on the standards. And we've internally weighted our standards based on reputational risk. And a member's risk that we categorise will depend on both the nature and number of non-conformances. And I just want to explain a little bit more about that. We could easily have done a very simple, well, it depends how many non-conformances you get. Anybody with a high number of conformances would therefore be deemed to be higher risk, poorer performer. But we all know that you could have two farmers, both with the same number of non-conformances against our standards. One that might be some non-conformances against some minor, let's say, paperwork standards and record keeping standards, versus other farmers who might have non-conformances against physical aspects or perhaps elements relating to the animal welfare on the farm, for example, on livestock farms. Therefore, it was really important that we actually needed to take an approach that took into account both the nature and the number of non-conformances. And I'm going to explain in a few more slides exactly how this will work, but ultimately it will mean in this risk-based approach that poorer marginal performers will be receiving unannounced inspections rather than just the routine inspection. Why do we believe we need to be introducing unannounced inspections? Well, that's very much around the integrity of the scheme, making sure, as I said before, that we encourage those poorer marginal performers to improve, but also, as I'll demonstrate, actually, if they don't improve, therefore they'll need to no longer be part of Red Tractor. And it's very important for the credibility of Red Tractor and the reputation of the majority who are maintaining our standards that we do impose those sanctions. And I'll talk a little bit about what we mean by unannounced inspections. But what I'm going to do now is just categorize, I suppose, the three ways in which it will work, depending on the outcome of the normal routine inspection. Sorry, I'm just having a little bit of a blip with the slide. There we are. Hopefully you can all see that. So how will it work? Well, as a result of a routine inspection, probably the easiest element to explain is if that somebody passes a routine inspection with absolutely no non-conformances, then nothing will change from the current regime. The normal inspection frequency will be the next time that farm will be inspected. And I think it's important to just mention at this point that phase 2 of this project, we want to look at how we can work with these farmers to reward these farmers for having no non-conformances. And that will be phase 2 of the project, but it's not an immediate thing that we're delivering now. And a couple of ideas and just to highlight that that we want to look at for rewarding these farmers is we're developing an online portal where farmers can upload records in advance of the inspection to make the inspection itself more efficient, and allowing the assessor perhaps to be more focused and just looking at the physical aspects. And we want to work with these group of farmers in developing that portal and developing that more efficient way of delivering the inspection. So that will be phase 2 of the project. We do recognise that we, some way of rewarding those farmers. So that will be coming, and we will be looking at this year. If we then look at the middle group, where some farmers have got some non-conformances, but those conformances have been low in risk, in nature, and low in number, then again, there'll be the normal inspection. We're flagging at some point in the future that might be at a shorter notice inspection. At the moment, we're not completely sure how that will pan out. But again, only a very minor change to the current inspection regime, no extra inspections for those farmers. So if we then move on to the category that I suppose this whole phase 1 of this project is focused on, which is the poorer marginal performers, where there are some non-conformances that have been raised that are high risk and potentially high in number. Then these are the farmers where an extra inspection, an extra unannounced inspection will therefore need to be required. And just to go in a little bit more detail about the timing and how that would work. So firstly, it's important to emphasise that this is Red Tractor classifying the farmers as into this group. It is not the assessor and it's not the certification body. It's very important to us that the assessor is there to do a job. They're not influenced at all. They do not. They will not have a say in this. So the inspector is completely independent when they go onto the farm and do the non-conformances. But as you all know, when a farmer has non-conformances, they have 28 days in order to put those non-conformances right, and these farmers will still be asked and required to put their non-conformances right within 28 days. But at the same time as putting those non-conformances right, they will also be told that to continue to be a Red Tractor member, they need to agree to have an unannounced inspection at some point in the next membership year, and they need to pay for it. Now, it's important to us that it's these members that are paying the cost of the unannounced inspections, and that the cost isn't being covered by other better performing farmers. It is at the members' cost, this unannounced inspection. Again, I'll talk a little bit about the unannounced inspection itself, but as you can see on the diagram, if as a result of the unannounced inspection, then there are improvements and the farm is actually not got a high risk and high number of non-conformances, and that's what we very much hope. As I said before, we hope that the farm will improve, then the farm will effectively move up to the next category and then go back to a routine assessment, albeit that might be at shorter notice. However, if as a result of the unannounced inspection, then there are no improvements, so the farm is non-conforming again, despite having put the non-conformances right, and therefore not maintaining the standards, then we'll have no option but to suspend the member. Before I go on to explain about the suspension, just a little bit more about the unannounced inspections, because we know that the farming industry have a lot of questions around unannounced inspections. We do mean truly unannounced, but we're also very conscious of the challenges and the practicalities of delivering unannounced inspections. So at the same time as the farmer agreeing to pay for the unannounced inspection, they're also going to be asked to complete a questionnaire, which will provide the assessor and the certification body with a lot more information around that farm. So for example, in the dairy sector, things like biosecurity arrangements, what time does milking start, what time is milking carried out. In the pig sector, again around biosecurity days, but also very importantly for every member, at least 3 contact telephone numbers of people that can be contacted should the assessor turn up and find nobody there. And the inspectors will turn up on the farm. If they can't find anybody there, then they will leave messages or phone those emergency contact telephone numbers, and they will wait up to an hour for responses on those phone numbers. So we do recognise that we need to be practical about this, and therefore the hope is that the information from the questionnaires will reduce the likelihood of not being able to get in contact with anybody. We will obviously be taking learnings from this as we roll this out to see how we can continue to reduce the likelihood of finding nobody at the inspection. So to go back then to no improvements and the member being suspended, it means exactly the same as it does now. If somebody is suspended, it means they can no longer sell stock or produce as assured. But in this instance, they will be suspended for as long as it takes them to put those non-conformances right. Once they've put the non-conformances right, they have to agree to another unannounced inspection, again at their cost. And if as a result of the second unannounced inspection, their farm has again slipped to having non-conformances and no improvements, then we'll have no option but to withdraw that member from the scheme. And it is important that we impose those type of sanctions on farms that have been unable to demonstrate that they are able to maintain the standards effectively throughout the year. And that is important, as I said, to protect the reputation of Red Tractor and the majority of those who are doing an excellent job. As I've said, we hope with this approach that actually the majority of members will improve and maintain our standards more, every member, every standard, every day. Okay, so some questions about when will it start? So for the pig sector, and the pig sector have done a huge amount of work on this. As I said, it's something that we've been looking at Red Tractor for quite a while. This actually began in November at the end of last year. It was rolled out in pigs, and by the 1st of November, that was the inspections that effectively started categorising people, categorising members. For dairy and poultry, it will begin at the beginning of April this year. And effectively, as I said before, this is a new way, a new approach. We will constantly be reviewing how it's working, how it's being delivered, and reviewing the feedback. But the intention is to then introduce for fresh produce, and we'll need to look at a slightly different approach there, because obviously the other three are livestock sectors in the late summer, and then the beef and lamb and crop sectors in the autumn. So our intention is to have rolled this out across all of the Red Tractor sectors by the end of the year. Obviously, every sector will be slightly different, but the principles will be the same. And as I said before, those other sectors will take the learnings from pigs and obviously the early days of dairy and poultry and learn from those before we implement in the other sectors. So what do members need to do? What's our clear message to members? Well, our clear message to members is to ensure that our Red Tractor standards are met all year round. And actually, for every single member, suspension can be avoided. If farmers are meeting our standards, every excuse me, every standard, then suspension can be avoided. Excuse me. Excuse me, Jess.
Yeah.
You just do the contingency.
Yeah, of course. Just while Philip is getting some water. So as we were saying, so in terms of contingency planning, in all the sectors, we already require that farmers have an emergency plan as part of meeting the standards. But often that doesn't cover what a member would do if they were to lose their Red Tractor certification. So one of the things that we are encouraging is that emergency plan, or that farmers have a contingency plan that will look at what they would do and so that they can consider what they would do if they were to be suspended from the scheme. So that's looking for potentially alternative outlets for non-assured product, and working with their customers and processors to work out what they could do in the event of being suspended from the scheme.
Thank you, Jess. Apologies, everybody. Okay, so where can members get more information? Well, you may be aware we've done quite a lot of farmer communication already. We've done newsletters to our pig sector, our poultry sector and our dairy sector, and they're all available online. And we've also got some more detailed explanations online as well under our member rules to the risk-based approach. So just to summarise, hopefully that gives you all an indication of exactly how it will work, why we're doing it. That's really the end of the presentation now. And Jess, have we got any questions?
We have, yes. So one of the questions that we've got that's come up a couple of times is around correction of non-conformances. So if a member has non-conformances at their routine inspection, whether they get a period to correct those non-conformances. and what they would do in the event of non-conformances being raised that wouldn't be rectified within the normal period. So, for example, if there was some maintenance work that needed doing on a building that then couldn't be done in a short period of time. And
so I think, effectively, in terms of correcting non-conformances, nothing changes to the current system. I think that's fair to say, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So farmers already get 28 days to rectify non-conformances. If there are significant non-conformances raised that do require capital expenditure, then they can be given longer, and nothing around that would change. So nothing around our current system actually changes. This is purely a way of identifying those marginal performers that probably need a little bit more scrutiny by us, and therefore another inspection.
And then another question that we've had here is around suspension again. So if a member is suspended, whether they get the chance to re-enter the scheme. So if I get that one while Philip is getting some more water. In terms of suspension, so suspension is a temporary period, and when a member is suspended, then they can re-enter the scheme. If a member, and this is under the current rules as well, if a member is withdrawn from the scheme, then there is still an opportunity potentially in the future to re-enter the scheme, but it's more permanent in that it's not just a matter of rectifying a non-conformances to lift a withdrawal from the scheme. Do you agree with that, Philippa?
Yes, yeah, thanks for that, Jess.
And another question we've had is about the communication. I think we probably covered this, but just to make sure that we had the communication to the member. So what does the member find out following their inspection? And do they know that they have been categorised as a potential high-risk farmer?
Yes, so as I said during the presentation, the farmer will know. They'll know pretty quickly after their inspection. And it will be part of the 28 days that they need to agree to the special condition of membership for the unannounced inspection going forward. So I think possibly that question came in before I covered that.
Yeah, it was quite an early question. We've had a couple of questions as well around disruption caused by unannounced inspections. So in those industries where, so for example, in the dairy industry where a farmer might be milking at the time that the inspector turns up, or if it was during harvest for combinable crops or fresh produce.
So I think probably what I didn't cover is what is important is that the unannounced inspection will not be a full inspection. So it will not be an inspection against all of the red tractor standards, because obviously we recognise that that would be impractical. So the unannounced inspection is a spot check. It's a spot check looking at the main, I suppose, high reputational risk areas on the farm, plus the non-conformances that the farmer had at the previous inspection. So I think we have understood the practicalities around that, and it would be a shorter inspection than a normal inspection against all of the standards.
And then we've had a couple of questions relating to cost. So the cost to the farmer of an unannounced inspection and any subsequent cost of then missing an unannounced inspection.
Okay, so the cost of the inspection will be the charge by the certification body. The certification body will indicate at the time the inspection fee that the farmer needs to pay, and that fee will be to cover the cost of the assessor, and obviously taking into account the fact that the assessor might have to wait around for a while. You know, if the farmer's milking, then the assessor will need to wait until the milking is finished. Or if, for example, they make a phone call and the farmer says, look, I'm an hour away, I'll be back in an hour. So the certification bodies will have had to incorporate that into their cost. And obviously we're trying to avoid the situation where there won't be anybody available. and I think the assessor will leave a card, won't they, Jess? Perhaps you can just explain that.
Yeah, that's right. So if an assessor has been to the farm to carry out an unannounced, and there's nobody there, and they've waited for a period of time, they phoned all the phone numbers that were provided to them to try and get hold of somebody, and nobody has responded to any of those calls, they will, will have to come to the decision that nobody's coming, and will leave the farm, and they will leave a card, a little bit like the sort of card that you get when you miss a delivery, to say that they've been, to say what time they arrived, and also how many numbers that they've tried to get hold of somebody before leaving the farm. There's another question here that's a bit more generic, Philippa, rather than just being about risk-based, which is about how much farmers have input into the standards themselves.
Oh, okay. So how, in terms of how we set the standards, then probably.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's probably something that we can cover now. So, Red Tractor, when we're setting our standards, we have technical advisory committees in every sector. Now, those technical advisory committees are made up of experts from within that sector. So there'll be farmers, processors, retail customers, experts. So, for example, in the livestock sectors in particular, vets and welfare experts. And it's those technical advisory committees that are responsible for reviewing the standards and effectively agreeing the standards. But what those technical advisory committees will look at when and consider when reviewing the standards are a number of things. Firstly, legislation. As we all know, legislation does change, and it's absolutely vitally important that Red Tractor standards keep up to date with current legislation. They'll also take into account customer requirements and customer expectations, which is very important. If Red Tractor is going to be a benefit to the farmer and meet customer requirements, we need to know what the customer requirements are, and also scientific, scientific evidence based as well. And then fourthly, another thing that they will take into account as well will be, in some cases, competitors, what our competitors are doing. And actually, we're just in the process of receiving a final report on some benchmarking that we've done, where we've benchmarked Red Tractor against other global assurance schemes and our competitors to see how Red Tractor fares, both to see where we have perhaps a competitive advantage, but also to see where the gaps are. And actually, I'm sure that will be something that we will probably be doing a future webinar on, as we will be looking to announce the results of that benchmarking in the next couple of months. So just to summarise, those technical advisory committees are responsible for the standards, and we also consult widely with stakeholders as well.
Thanks, Philippa. And then we've also had a couple of questions about the appeals process in terms of the risk-based.
Okay, so I suppose there's two aspects to this. So if a farmer has an inspection and an assessor raises a non-conformance, but the assessor does not agree that was a non-conformance, so they actually believe they were meeting the standards, then the farmer has always got the opportunity to appeal to the certification body. That's always been there, and that will continue to be there, that they can appeal against that non-conformance being raised. If a farmer has concerns about being chosen, effectively to be unannounced and doesn't believe that they should be in that category, then our advice is that they firstly discuss it with their certification body, but that can then be passed by the certification body to Red Tractor. As I said before, we've already started this in pigs, and there have been a number of occasions where farmers who have been chosen for an unannounced inspection has wanted to discuss it further with Red Tractor. So both the certification bodies and Red Tractor, and Red Tractor does have a formal appeals process that farmers and members can go through if it gets to that point.
Great. And then I think possibly one of the final questions is the publicity of how the communication of the weighting of the standards. So will we be telling a farmer how we are categorising the standards? Will we be telling industry how we're categorising the standards?
So as I said before, so this is something that we've considered very long and hard internally within Red Tractor. And at the moment, our view is that this is very much something that we are embarking on for the first time. We feel that we need to make sure that it's working. It's an internal mechanism for us to categorise the standards. We will not be publishing what those categories of standards are. For us, the clear message and the clear, simple message to farmers is that every single standard is important and every single standard needs to be maintained. It would get very confusing if we started to create lots of ranking of different standards. And secondly, again, as I emphasised, actually the assessors and a lot of farmers that we've spoken to believe this is really quite important. And I think actually the feedback we've had from the certification bodies as well, in most cases, is that the assessors are not influenced, they're there to do a job, and so the assessors do not know what the rankings are either. So we will not be publishing them, but obviously we will be considering feedback and feedback from stakeholders as we go along with this project. Have you got anything to add on that?
No, I don't think so. I think the other thing that I'm seeing a lot of in the questions is a lot of interest in the portal. Lots of farmers interested in being able to use the portal when it will become available, and also whether there'll be help in getting familiar with how to operate the portal.
Okay, so it's excellent. Really good news to hear that people are interested in the portal. Our objective is we're just in the final stages at the moment of identifying who our key IT partner will be to deliver the portal. Our plan would be to probably be running some pilots on the portal in the summer. I'm delighted that lots of people are interested, because at some point we will be looking for volunteers to help us test it. It's really important to us that that portal is going to be user-friendly for farmers in order to be able to upload documents. And obviously we've also got to test the fact that it has an interface with assessors as well, so that the assessors can see what's on that portal in advance. So watch this space. We understand it is definitely something that a lot of people are very interested in, and I'm sure when we're at the stage to launch it, I'm sure we'll be doing a huge amount of communication and probably a similar webinar to this to help people use it and to launch it. So delighted that people are very positive about that.
Great. And then I think we've had a few questions that are sector specific, not necessarily around risk based. I think we can take those offline and hopefully answer your questions offline on those. The other question that we've had that is more, again, a bit more generic, is in terms of templates and whether we offer templates for inspections.
So yes, so on our website we provide quite a lot of information to help and support farmers. So we recognise that there are a number of records that are required by our standards, and that in some cases farmers might not necessarily know where to start with that record if they haven't already got it themselves. So on our website, which is redtractor.org.uk, there is an area on our website that details a whole list of templates that can be downloaded and that farmers can use if they haven't got that record themselves. So my suggestion would be that people go to the website, have a look and see what's there. If they can't find what they're looking for, then contact us at Red Tractor and somebody will be able to point them in the right direction. But as I said before, we have got an awful lot of blank templates there to help farmers as much as possible.
I think that answers, just checking that there are no last minute questions coming in. I think that covers the vast majority of the questions. Like I said, there are a few that are very sector specific on standards, so we can take those offline and we will respond after the webinar. If you do have any questions that you haven't yet asked, please ask them now.
Okay, so I think it's really just to say there are no other questions. Then we'd be really keen on getting feedback on this webinar. As you can see, Jess has just put up a quick poll. If you wouldn't mind just indicating whether you found this webinar, whether you found this useful or not. We'd also be really keen on any feedback on other topics that you'd like us to cover in future webinars. We'd be keen to do this type of thing again if you felt it would be well received. The other thing to say is that we will be, like the consumer webinar, we will be putting a recording of this webinar on our website. So for those people that either want to hear it again because you didn't necessarily catch it all, or you want to refer colleagues or friends to it, then please feel free to pass that on. So I think finally we're just delighted that you could all join us. Thank you very much, and we hope you have a good evening. Thank you. Thank you, Jess, too.
Thanks, Philippa.
Okay.